this is going to be the first part of doing your shim measurements and then shim replacements. Been having a hard time, as always, with getting parts in here, so I'm making this into a two-part. The first part, this is just going to be a walkthrough, kind of explanation of what I'm going through, and then the second part is going to be the actual wrench turning, so that I'm not interrupting myself a lot explaining. And hopefully, as a viewer, you guys can just use this first part as like a walkthrough, familiarization, whatever, and the second part, me just doing it. I want to stress, I don't normally say it because I don't like a lot of it, but this one's a little different. You know, what I'm doing or what I'm trying to offer or whatever is only a guideline or a help. If you're not comfortable with this, don't do it. And no bullshit. If you don't have a manual, at the very least, if you don't have your Haynes, I run both. I run Haynes and OEM Triumph. You don't have either one of those. I'm using both. You don't have either one of them. Seriously, don't do this. Just don't do it. Either take it to a shop and have it done, or somebody that you know or trust or whatever. But don't wing this. This is not something to wing. This isn't an oil change. The reason why I say that, it's not so much as it's hard, it's just there are real specific steps and you have to follow these steps. And if you don't follow these steps, you will screw something up. You're getting into where you're working with your top end of your motor, and you gotta take your cams out. So your timing has to be locked in, because ultimately if you mess up your timing, worst case, your piston comes in or your valve comes in with your piston, you've got major problems. So there's a lot of very specific steps that have to be followed, and they have to be followed for very specific reasons. If you do not follow them, if you skip over one, overlook something, you are going to screw something up. Guaranteed. Not trying to scare anybody off, but just have the right documentation, have the right paperwork, your manuals, whatever, and use this as a guidelines and you'll be fine. But I want to stress the seriousness of it. So much so that I have both manuals, and I went through my OEM manual and printed out just the specific pages. So I got papers just to flip through rather than a whole book for easier reference. So just to give you an idea of the steps involved on this. So with that said, I made a couple quick notes just to walk this through, plus I always use this little tablet thing. So of course you're going to start off with your cam and your alternate covers off. Mine are already off because I've started out my page with a whole bunch of work being done. So, with that said, I'm going to flip this camera around and start explaining everything as it's focused on the bike. I wanted to show you my ugly mug just to stress that have the manuals, have a good gist. You should have a good gist if you're trying this, and this is more like you're like me, a visual learner, and you know, like to be able to put eyes on something to give you a little more confidence, then by all means use this page, and I hope it's awesome. If you're not comfortable with it, you don't have the right manuals, all that stuff, don't mess with this. Just take it and have it done someplace else. So, off my face and back to Bonnie, and I'm going to start just walking through these steps and explaining what has to be done. Okay, we're back. As you already know, my timing cover is already off, and my cam cover is already off. So we're going to put the bike in the center, drop dead center. Now we do that, of course, with your 10 millimeter. You bring it around, and let's see if we can see it here, or the manual. There's, yeah, this line here on the rotor matching up to your casing line. Come up And on this side of the bike, you have your timing chain. That's, let me see if I can get this. Label top. Now, coming around the bike, you have I&E, inlet exhaust. And if you look, and once again, going off the manual, you'll have this in the book. But you have your hash mark to your hash marks, and your dots to your dots. 2 dots, 2 hash marks on the cams, 1 on the timing center. That's where you want to line those up into. We're in center. So we got the bike locked in. Next step. Your camshaft oil feed pipe is this right here. This line going across. That's going to have to come off. When you take this off, there's 2 washers here and here, and there's a gasket, a rubber seal gasket here. These 3 items will have to be replaced. So we're going to take this off, and then these 3 pieces are going to be discarded and replaced with new ones. So that right there has to be done. So you already have minor, but still 3 replacement parts in order to do this operation. One thing I do, if you notice, if you look in here, you see these red magnetic tabs. 2 of them are for spark plugs, and this one is your direct line to your bottom end, your balancers under there. I use this with a magnetic wand, and I basically plug the hole, because you hear a lot of stories, people going through and drop a screw, drop this, drop that, whatever, and it goes into your bottom end of your motor. If it goes into the bottom end of your motor, you got 2 choices. You can either go fishing with one of these, and if you get lucky, you're good. If not, you have to take apart your motor and go get it from your bottom end. It's a big deal. It's so much of a big deal that I do this to block it off. And then also remember, you have a straight line, because that's your timing timing chain going to low end. So you have access in here too, that I'll stuff with a rag on all sides before I actually start in and start working on this bike. But I do plug those holes just because I'm anal and extra careful. So with that, these, of course, are your cams. Because of backyard with no garage, I am doing this. I'm doing cams one at a time. So I'm going to start with my inlet, get it out, get my shims out, measure them, get what I have to need to replace them with, put the old ones back in, put the cans back on, then go to my exhaust side. So I'm basically doing the job several times, but I just don't have the facilities to take both cams out at both times and leave them out. But with that said, there are differences. This cam cannot go here and vice versa. If you look, I'm not sure, try to get it on this. Okay, you have, that's overfill line there. Under here, right above my wand, you see that is kind of grooved. That little ring thing there, that's a grooved ring. That is marking your inlet cam, where you come straight across here, and that one's not beveled. It's just straight, a smooth ring going across there. That's your exhaust cam. Cams cannot be switched out.
This is your inlet cam, that's your exhaust cam. Switch them out, you're going to screw something up. Okay, on to your camshaft holders. This is another big deal. Looking at it in this manner, and it's per the manual, these are your holders. If you look, I can get it. Not sure, but here there's a marking 1 with an arrow pointing up. Underneath the pipe, oil pipe here, is 2 arrow pointing towards the front wheel. Of course, there's 3 air. You can kind of see the 3 there because I reddened it. And you have 4, 5, 6. These have to go back in the same number, in the same order, pointing the same way. And not only that, but each one has 2 T30 Torx screws with the holder, and underneath in here are going to be 2 dowels for each side. It's important to know these pieces are coming out because you do not want to be missing any pieces, because if you're missing pieces, they're either down around the bike or, God forbid, they've fallen down into the bottom end of the motor. It states in the manual, when this block, when the head is cut, this is cut with it. So why is that a big deal? That's a big deal because basically this one bracket by itself is essentially $1,000, because you cannot put number 6 into the number 2 slot. You damage number 2, you cannot go out and buy a new bracket for number 2. They're made with the head. They can't be switched out and alternated with each other, and if they're damaged, you get to buy a new head. So this is so important that I've gone through. As you can see, I have my little organizer that I keep, and these are for my shims that I'm going to take out and measure. So each one, I want inlet 1, inlet 2, 3, 4, exhaust 1, 2, 3, 4, and then these are for these holders so they don't get mixed up. So I have cam 1, cam 2, cam 3, cam 4, cam 5, and cam 6. And that's in reference to this. So each one of these pieces is going to have the bracket, the 2 Torx screws, and the 2 dowels in each one, and so that it stays nice and neat and organized and nothing gets lost or mixed up. Now, when you remove the cams, how we're going to do this, per the manual, we're just going to, like I said before, we're just doing one at a time. So I'm going to start with the inlet. Once the inlet's done, then the inlet cam's going to go back on, and I'm going to do the exhaust. I'm not doing them at the same time. But you cannot, basically your cam is all this whole one piece. Then while the lobe is up on this end, they're down on this end pressure. So another key thing to be very careful on, you just don't start unscrewing and loosening all in one spot. You have to go in a specific way. And if you go towards the book, it shows that it's basically 1, 2 to 3, 1 to 2 to 3, and you're going to cross pattern. So I'm going to do like half turns. Start 1, first nut, second nut, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. I'm going to keep going across like that until it basically gets loose enough to where I can raise it up and get it out of there. Now, why are you doing that? you're doing that because you don't want the valve pressure torquing it out on one end and bending your cams. If you get the least slightest bend of your cam, no good. Get to buy new cams. I think they're about $800 or $900, so it's a big deal. But before we do any of that, and the reason why I'm not doing it right now is because, and this is another very important aspect of the operation, you have to lock your cams in. I don't have the tool to lock the cams in yet. I'm still waiting on it in the mail. That's why I'm just doing a verbal walkthrough. When you lock it in, it's a 4mm right here, this hole here, 4mm to a 6mm, and basically this cam is what you call a sprung gear. And if you can see, there's two different lines on here. The back end is your gearing that keeps in time with here, because other designs are that this cam chain right here is incorporated into your camshafts as well, and it's all one piece. With the Bonnie, you can take your cams off without having to alter your timing chain whatsoever because of the sprung gear. But because you have the sprung gear, and to prevent the backlash, you have to lock this cam in before you start taking it off the bike. If you don't do that, you will lose timing on your engine. If you don't have it secured in there and you get a backlash from your sprung gear, you will lose timing on your engine. So before any of that takes place, it's a 6mm to a 4mm, basically looks like an Allen tool, is going to slip through there and lock the gear into the sprung gear. That's in turn going to lock your timing in with your cam timing or your cam chain. That has to be done on both ends to lock them in, and then you go through the process I just explained, loosening them up and getting your cam off the bike. So all this has to be done to get this little tiny shim out right here, so I can get its measurement and then go down to the dealership and order the shim. So, with that said, we're going to go through the shim equation here in a moment, and I'll just show you the basic gist of how to run the equation. Alright, doing the shim equation. Now, I'm just going to go through and show one. Of course, we can't get our shim out because I don't have the tool to lock in my cam, but we're just going to go through and I'll show it real quick. The equation is simply A equals B minus C plus D. That's our equation. Now, the A equals the shim to order. This is the shim this is the brand new shim we want to get in to replace whatever shims are bad. B is our valve clearance readings. That's from the other video, why we go through and do our valve clearance checks. C is the measurement we want, the means that we want to be at. So an example, the inlet valves, the tolerances are 0.15 to 0.20. So we're going to split that and be happy in the middle. So C is going to be 17.5 on your inlet, and then the exhaust, we're allowed 0.25 to 0.30, which means our happy medium is 27.5. So 27.5 for the exhaust side of our calculations. And D is the existing shim, which we cannot get right now because I cannot lock my cam to get it off, to get the shim off, to measure it, to finish this equation. So we're just going to use our erroneous number for D just to show the equation. So A, what we want to buy. B is a valve clearance check. So on mine, my worst one was inlet 3, which was at 22 millimeters. So we're going to go 22 minus C. In C, for our inlet, is 17.5. Then plus D, and I'm just gonna say I'm just pulling the number out my ass, so let's just say 20 millimeters. Okay, now that's not gonna be it, but I'm just finishing the equation. So we got 22 minus 17.5 is 4.5 plus 20. And that's going to be a 24.5 millimeter shims. Now looking it up on the range of what we can order, we lost that paper number. But on the order, we're going to go with closest measurement. So if they have, like on this is 24.5, no, this is basic numbers. So if they only have like, 24.3, 24.4, whatever, you order to the nearest measurement of the shim that you can get. And that's basically how you fill out the equation, and how you do each shim that is out of tolerance, so that when you do get that new shim in on order and replace it in its bucket, then you go through and your valve clearances will be within spec and you're good to go. And that's simply the equation. And that's about it as far as the walkthrough. Hopefully it was helpful, but and the next step will be the actual physical doing wrench turning of this operation once I'm able to lock my cams in and do it. So, hope you get something out of it, and hopefully I'll be able to follow up with the actual process of this. So, have to wait and see. Waiting on Pony Express now.